when you think of those things that maybe you want to share but are blocked or like get that analysis paralysis on, are those typically a you thing? Like you're recognizing your own shame or your own guilt? Or are those like, I'm going to be saying something that could affect somebody else's life?
Definitely the latter. Yeah. So that's a really great clarification and distinction, that whenever it gets into things about my life and parts of my life that I've shared with other people, that's whenever it starts to feel tricky. And like, can I massage this enough that it's still true and accurate and does not potentially do harm to someone else?
Before we dive in, let me tell you about the book that started a podcasting revolution, Make Every Podcast Want You. It is not just a bestseller, it is a 2-time gold medalist, baby. This book is your ultimate guide to landing dream podcast interviews, building authority authentically, and making your voice the one they remember. If you've got a message and a mission, this is your mic drop moment. Grab your copy today in the link below and step into the spotlight that you were born for.
Welcome to the Communication Queens podcast for the visionary leaders, speakers, service providers, and podcasters who are looking to stand out sharing their story. I'm your host, Kimberly Spencer, former screenwriter turned master communications coach. On this podcast, I'll be coaching you on how to share your own transformation story so that you increase your visibility, influence, and income on podcast interviews. Let's get your voice heard.
Hànanda, welcome to the Communication Queen podcast. Like, I know we can dive into all things note investing, bringing forth real wealth and transformation, since you have transformed your life quite substantially from walking away from everything with $160 in your pocket to increasing your net worth by 1,000% in 5 years, you badass. And
sounds so good when you say it.
You know, it's so funny with podcast interviews. I've had that happen. Like when I first started going on a lot of interviews and I would have my bio read back and be like, damn, I am pretty awesome.
And it also requires me to take a deep breath.
Yeah. I mean, you've had such a transformation, and only now are you starting to really show up very visibly online on social media, putting yourself out there. What's been this shift in your visibility strategy? Is it just a business strategy, or is it part visibility business, part personal development?
I think that's a fantastic question. And it really is both. I think part of me recognizes that for my business, people can't find me if I don't show up. They can't find me if I don't show up. So that's part of the equation. But I have really found that I had so much resistance to showing up publicly for parts of my story that didn't feel comfortable with, for just being seen. I grew up in the generation of young Southern women who don't speak until you're spoken to. Learning humility was an important quality. All of those things really set me back. And I also recognize that to heal some of those things and break out of that conditioning, I just have to feel the fear and do it anyway. So,
and yet you're a fellow Miss Congeniality. I love it.
Oh, peace.
So the thing that I found with beauty pageants, because it's very rare that I get to speak to anyone else who's been in a beauty pageant, I found them to be very liberating and also terrifying, because that interview question that's out of nowhere, that's like, you know, suddenly all that you have is only who you are and only what you have up here in your brain. And some things the questions are just random and out of the blue, because it's like about world events. And if you're not informed on those, it's good luck. But
smell big.
Did beauty pageants in any way have a beneficial outcome for you for learning your voice?
Not so much about learning my voice, but more about like how to show up I learned a lot about presentation and comportment for sure. And also the willingness to be seen, even under a really almost false narrative of the beauty pageant. But for me, it was really wanting to feel I definitely wanted validation. And I didn't know that at the time. I was 14, 15, and 16. I wanted validation. I wanted a sense of security. I wanted approval. And so for me, the beauty pageant, I loved getting things like Miss Scholastic and Miss Congeniality, probably more than I enjoyed winning first place or the main crown, because that actually felt less hollow to me than the hollow victory of, great, I got the pat on the back, I got the fantastic crown, I look great in pictures. So those were more of a hollow victory that didn't really solve the problem of me seeking security from other people.
I think that that's such a poignant point. I too found much more validation or self-affirmation, I would say, with the Miss Congeniality and winning certain specific awards for my actual achievements, rather than 7 random humans judging me and saying that I should be, the one who holds a title. That's actually why I named my coaching business Crown Yourself, was because I was like, I realized I didn't need their validation in order to put a crown on my head.
That's fantastic. And if you ever see pictures of my parents are gorgeous. I have nothing to do with I have very little to do with how I look. My parents are just gorgeous people. And this is just, everything else is just a side effect, except for the things that I've worked for and earned and created myself. Yeah.
So speaking of earning, I know that earning and integrity, I found they go very much hand in hand. And I know you and I very much share that, but that integrity is such a high value for both of us. And how is showing up and showing parts of you, and also choosing to keep certain parts of you private, where's the dance with your own integrity with that?
That's actually one of the biggest things that stops me from showing up, or was stopping me from showing up. And I still get, whenever I'm creating content, this analysis paralysis around that, because I do, integrity for me is simply, am I in alignment in my thoughts, my words, and my deeds from the inside out? Am I being who I say I am? Mm-hmm. So integrity is a huge thing. And then if I only want to focus on some aspects, how I do that, can I still do that and be in integrity, for me, can create honestly, at times, a real battle. And that's something I have, again, I do get analysis paralysis around that.
Yeah, I think for me, one of the things I've found is there are just certain clear lines of what I will and will not share. And I'm very open, obviously, about being a mother and having young kids. And there's some really funny things, but also really hard things that come with young kids. And towing the line that kids are not necessarily content, but they definitely are a part of my life. And looking at how can I present my kids, because there are some things that I've seen online that I'm like, your children are going to hate you in 10 years. For showing videos of their kid farting on camera, or, just going to the bath. I'm like, that's your child. You are literally putting that out there for the world to see. And I would never want to put my child in a position where I put something out that's congruent for me, but not actually in integrity with them. And so there's boundaries that I have around what I share, around what my kids are going through, and with who I share those with, and how I share what I learn from those experiences, so that it's from the vein of my perspective, but it's not anything that could be, that they could look back and be like, oh, I really wish mom hadn't shared that about me. And I hope I toe that line well. I think I do, but that's where my integrity boundaries are, is typically if it's involving somebody else, that's where I'm like, okay, how can I gracefully share from my perspective? When you think of those things that maybe you want to share but are blocked or like get that analysis paralysis on, are those typically a you thing, like you're recognizing your own shame or your own guilt, or are those like, I'm going to be saying something that could affect somebody else's life?
Definitely the latter. Yeah. So that's a really great clarification and distinction, that whenever it gets into things about my life and parts of my life that I've shared with other people, that's whenever it starts to feel tricky. And like, can I massage this enough that it's still true and accurate and does not potentially do harm to someone else? And that's the line that I find I steer to more omission than taking more time to figure out how to do that better.
Yeah. I think that in that space, that's such a great space to navigate in terms of respecting other people's privacy. Like, I know that for me, I had definitely had boundaries around my father, around like what I would share while he was alive, and what I said that I also had his permission to share certain things once he'd passed. And I asked my mom for permission as well. Not that I really needed it, but she was like, your father would have wanted you to share certain things about my past and certain childhood abuses that I experienced. But for example, when it comes to my ex, like, I share more from the perspective of like both my ex-husband and my ex-business partner. I share from the perspective of what I learned from those situations, rather than sharing on interviews about like what they did. I think when we point the finger of blame and we label something as like, oh, they're a narcissist or they're abusive, or like, that's a delicate line to toe, especially, and this is what I've known from having coached and worked with women and had clients and who have been through domestic violence situations. Like, there is a very real presence that your safety first and foremost comes first.
I think that's a great way to craft around that. And that's something that I think I'll definitely play with. And for me, it is that sense of like, there's a lot more that I probably would share openly about my life experiences whenever my parents are no longer on the planet. You know, I am their baby girl. I am single on the planet, and I don't want them to worry about me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Worry about me. I've got, I'm doing okay. But I think that they might become alarmed at some of my life experiences, and I'd rather avoid that.
I just shocked my mom and put it into a movie.
Maybe that'll be our second project.
I think that it's so great that you have this level of honor in what you do and in respect that you have for others. I think that is what makes you such a successful investor, as well, as that you respect others, you treat others' money and investments with incredible amount of respect. And it's these values that are driving the success of your business that I also honestly think could drive the success of your having greater visibility.
Thank you for acknowledging that. And I will say, like, I am a daddy's girl. And my gold standard for my investors is that if I wouldn't put it in my dad's portfolio, I wouldn't put it in your portfolio. And that really is, I am incredibly, again, love and loyalty, in integrity and service are my top values. So in what I do in note investing, I get to honor all of those qualities of me. And again, my dad gets to be my gold standard. If I have to lower the bar, I wouldn't lower the bar for my dad ever.
I think that's such a powerful standard. So what are the stories that you've maybe in the past have felt uncomfortable sharing that now you're at a space where you're like, I feel like I could share this and not feel like there would be worry on your family's part or on anybody else's part of like, are you okay? Did you survive?
I have survived, and I have had a fantastically active life with lots of variables. And one thing that I am getting more honest about with myself, and I am starting to acknowledge that I was in a mediocre marriage, and I wasn't made for mediocrity. I mean, seriously, look at me. I am not made for mediocrity. And this is where that part of navigating, like, I accepted a mediocre marriage. And the day that I realized that it was all just, it was a literal, visceral moment. I know that we're both sensational people. We really live into our senses. And I had a visceral moment. I remember exactly where I was. I was on the dance floor at a retreat in Texas. And I had this incredibly visceral moment of everything is just okay. And I literally walked off the dance floor and phoned my then husband and started asking some meaningful questions. And I feel like I am really just met that point where I feel like I can verbalize that. Ta-da! I was in a mediocre marriage.
And I think that's such a powerful revelation for so many women, especially, is like recognizing for where in your life, whether it's financial or your business or your friendships or, romantic marriage relationships, like where are you just settling?
If you're listening to this interview thinking, I want to do that, I want to be on more podcasts, I want to share my brilliance with the world, then I have got the service for you. It is called Podmatch. Think of it like Bumble, but for podcasting. This AI-powered platform matches you with the right podcast host so you can pitch less and get booked more. I've used it to land aligned interviews that amplified my voice and built my brand. It is literally one of the few services I recommend in my best-selling award-winning book, Make Every Podcast Want You. Sign up now at podmatch.com in the link below.
It was a very powerful moment for me. I knew that whenever I decided to leave, there was that moment where I decided to leave the UK. My gut feeling, and again, I know that we're both intuitive, my gut feeling is that my marriage had a 50-50 chance of survival. It's like, it can go either way, but I knew I had to leave. That part was non-negotiable. I was leaving a very complex situation. And my husband was invited to come with me or not. Again, my then husband. And I figured we had a 50-50 chance of survival. And I was really okay with with those odds. And even just taking ownership of that for the first time out loud to anyone else is novel and also incredibly powerful. So thank you for the question.
You're very welcome. I think the other piece of your story one of the things that I love about your one sheet, your bio, I know you've done our Do Your Deliverables masterclass. I know you are one of the first readers of the book. I know you got the book. So you've done such a masterful job in how you present yourself with a level of specificity in your story. And so many women who want to empower women financially don't do that. And yet your story, just being able to say that you were able to walk away with everything with $162 in your pocket and then increase your net worth by 1,000% in 5 years, that's incredible. And those are all very specific numbers that you really leverage. Walk me through the story behind what happened and how you were able to do that.
Follow my intuition, making brave choices, and everything else. I would say it happened by accident, but you know that that's not the truth. I took a lot of risk, and I was no longer if I can risk. I risked leaving everything behind with $160. It was $662. I'll look up our records just so I could be accurate in this conversation.
I love this. I really do respect and love the specificity of $162. When I first started my coaching business, I was like, I made no money for a year, and I was like, no. And I then checked. I was like, I made $15. But I'm not sure if it was my own self buying my own program because I didn't know how to test my checkout page worked. And then I was like, no, I did have one coaching client that was $100 a month. So I did make $100 in my first year. It wasn't zero. It was 115, and 15 of those dollars might have been mine.
Fantastic. And yeah, so I applied for my very first job in the United States, and I got that job, and I was fired from that job within 6 months, but that was the whole nother catalyst of change. Really quite dynamic and weirdly for me, dramatic. Lots of things came to a head from that. And simply sheer perseverance. One, I don't ever spend more than I make. I think that that's a skill set that a lot of people have lost.
Yes.
And that means that I've made some really difficult choices to go without things that most people find they wouldn't make the sacrifice. And I really paved the first 5 years of don't spend anything that you don't have to. And I'm an experienced person, and I happen to be a minimalist, so that wasn't as challenging as it might sound. But I did without a lot of things, and I made a lot of really tricky choices. I chose to live for free. I also manifested a mansion for a year on a lake. So a combination of true manifestation, working at anything that I could work at, not spending anything I didn't need to spend, and looking for every opportunity to leverage every dollar that I could.
I think one of the things that I've seen more entrepreneurs struggle with than not is like once they start hitting revenue numbers that they're like really impressed by. And then sometimes we have those seasons of life where our revenue numbers dip and the spending doesn't get adjusted for the revenue that's actually being made versus the revenue that you know that you can make. And I've seen this happen with fitness. I've seen it with like people's bodies where they're like, they know they can eat a ton of calories because they're training for a marathon. I did this myself. And then suddenly it's like, oh, I'm no longer training for a marathon. I probably shouldn't be eating 400 more calories per day. So there's that, how are you able to, like, what is your financial practice that you put into place so that when revenue fluctuates, you're able to make those very fast adaptations that I think this is a necessary skill for any entrepreneur to know?
I have my practice is that I buy myself one treat, and that treat might be a really fantastic meal out, or it might be a pair of cowboy boots or an infrared sauna, but I buy myself one treat. And then after that, everything I might buy one investment. And then after that, everything goes back into the business or into an investment. So I don't change my lifestyle. My budget doesn't change, but I give myself one reward. And I think, I'm 55. So I recognize that my runway to create the kind of financial impact that I want is shorter than it was 30 years ago. So I really consider that I'm laying down low to tracks so I can have the life that my life can be easier and I can eventually not have to do all the things that I do right now. But I definitely have the end game in mind. And again, I just don't change my budget, and I do live by a budget.
That's a lesson that most entrepreneurs either need to learn or learn the hard way.
Definitely that profit first mentality. I get the treat. I don't change my budget. I have one business investment, and then I make everything else goes back into a personal investment.
When you are supporting people in note investing, walk us through what note investing is, and like, let's see if we can make it even sexier.
Because I already think note investing is pretty sexy, because one thing that I love about it is it gives, for me, I think about, a little bit more about my history than what we've shared here, that the sense of security, and whether you think about beauty pageants and the need for security or financial security, the thing I love about note investing is that it does give me the financial security and the sense of safety, because I'm helping women become first lien holders. And in that, they they inherit the rights of a bank or a lender. And so for me, that sense of security gives me personally so much because of my life experience. And then with those transferable rights, it means that my women investors are secure in non-payment, and they profit whenever there is payment. And what I love about that, again, that sense of you get passive income. So it's a super easy investment to make. There's not a lot of research to be done. And you are simply you're replacing the bank and becoming a first lien holder on a single family home that's been paying on a regular basis. And with that, you are simply getting that monthly income. So if you've ever paid a mortgage, then now you're being paid someone else's mortgage note. And again, there's that paper behind it that says it's secure, that in the event of non-payment, that you have legal recourse.
How did you stumble upon note investing compared to other forms of real estate investing or other forms of investing? And why is this the one that you're like, yes, I want to empower women to be able to make money and have invest in a life that they love?
I stumbled upon it. So I had those first 5 years of just pure frugality and hustle, and mindset and manifestation. I was doing all of that. And that led me to okay, well, I'm starting to figure out how to make enough money. So now I have money to invest. Now that I'm investing, I want to go with, I think real estate's a great avenue. And I grew up with my dad understood real estate and he had some investment properties. So for me, that just made sense. And whenever I started to do that, I recognized that it didn't bring the sense of security that I wanted. And it also recognized that it wasn't passive. Having a landlord, having a tenant, and having to manage through storms and non-payment, whenever there's different legal recourse, that's not nearly as severe. So basically, I figured out, and dealing with contractors was not part of my love language. It was work that I didn't have the skill set for, but it also didn't make me feel safe and secure. And so through navigating in real estate, I actually went to a 3-day real estate investing event. And the very last speaker that I heard happened to speak about note investing. And, it's that time of the day. It's the last of the 3-day event, the last speaker. Very few people are still left. And I still felt like I've milked the event and I haven't left with what I wanted. And it was that last speaker that talked about note investing. I was like, that is what I'm looking for. And it is simply the fact that I get a steady return. I get monthly payments that I can literally bank on. For me, that ticked all of the boxes. And with the women that I work with, and I'd say that most women that I know have had some level of insecurity. They feel like they are in a relationship or a home or a job that they don't have the security or safety to walk away from. And whenever you have insecurity in your finances and you have insecurity in your life, for a lot of people, that leaves them to paralysis and some level of trauma. So removing one of those obstacles, I feel like I am really contributing to not only their sense of safety, but hopefully from that safety, then they're able to find freedom. And that's where I think women thrive, is when they have the freedom to walk away from the people, places, and things that no longer serve them.
I would say that is right there is the core of your message, because I've never heard it explained. And I've talked to a lot of investors in the past. My husband used to do real estate investing. We have our own real estate investments but the way that you frame it so eloquently, not only as a female investor, but the story of safety and the lovingness that comes with a fuck you fund, as you've called it, when you're feeling sassy. Of yeah, I'm no longer tolerating this because I have certainty. I've completed Maslow's hierarchy, the base foundation of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And that foundation is so critical. And I think that as business owners and as entrepreneurs, especially for so many people who tolerate a level of risk, I know that I definitely have taken on more risk than most would be comfortable with. However, there is a need, and I agree with you of that the trauma response that comes from relational insecurity, job insecurity, and financial insecurity that leads to just complete paralysis and a generational problem for women specifically of not being able to get out of the systems that have kept us stuck, aka patriarchy. And so being able to break free of that, I think that your voice and your message and how you frame that so brilliantly, correlating financial trauma or trauma in general and trauma responses to financial insecurity is literally a message that I have not heard phrased exactly how you have been able to phrase it here. I think that is one of your greatest assets in messaging to move forward on more podcasts. That piece right there, because you've been there, you've been in that trauma place.
Thank you. That's fantastic. And that's fantastic feedback. And it really was like, I found note investing was successful for me. And I was toying with the idea of it being my business. And do we have a few more minutes? I'll tell you a story about why this is now a business. So I help open a yoga studio during the middle of COVID, because who else does that? While everybody else is closing down, we opened a studio during the middle of COVID. And the very last day that I'm teaching, like I was the lead teacher, the trainer. I was the person who opened the studio. We are a year in. We are successful. We're growing, and we've built this amazing community. And it is legit my last class. And I've had a miscommunication with my coffee date, which was a fellow teacher and student. And I'm there at my last class, and there's this lady I've seen in several classes, but we've never gone out to coffee or anything. And she is hanging around the studio, and I say, "Hey, do you want to go for a coffee?" And she's like, "Yeah." And we go to a coffee shop just a couple of doors down from the yoga studio. And again, I know that she is very attentive on her yoga mat, but I don't know anything about her. And very seemingly with great ease, I'm going to actually take that back. That's not true. She tells her story unfolds about she is with her husband and their kids. He's cheated on her. She doesn't have any security, and he's threatened that if she leaves, he will take the kids. He's got the money, the power, and the clout to make that a true statement. And during the course of this conversation, and this all comes out over a cup of coffee, after practice, I'm not expecting any of this, but I used to also be a counselor, so I'm also not surprised, and I've heard the story many, many other times. Then she goes on to recognize that her mother, or share with me rather, that her mother was in exactly the same position, and her mother chose to take her life. I can only listen and be there and offer support. And I walk out of that meeting, and I'm incredibly visceral experience. I remember exactly where I am, and I lean on my car, and I even bang my car's little lid. And I recognize, this is why this needs to be a business. I've heard this story from countless other women who, whether it's a marriage or some other relationship that they want to leave. I've even, as a counselor, a toxic home full of mold that they didn't have the resources to walk away from. Mm-hmm. And they're saying, this is the why behind your business. And then from then, I was like, I am really committed to making this not just about my own personal success, but how can more women step into their power of their financial power and their financial freedom. I think that whenever women have money, they have choices. And generally speaking, we do great things when we have choices.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that mission behind it, thank you for sharing that story, because I think that leading with that story in any show that you go on brings in so much heart and also fear, because I too have known the women who have left with nothing in their pockets and who are going through situations and relationships that, gosh, just the other day, I walked into the kitchen and I gave Spike the biggest hug, and I was like, thank you for not being an asshole. Because I met another woman who shared with me another story about just being with a total douchebag and how she now has to provide for her her daughter, because her husband decided to make some other choices. And that experience alone, it's just like, it's heart-wrenching for me when women have been deprived of a financial literacy. I think intentionally, because when we do understand finances, and we can be really freaking good at finances. I turned around a cash flow problem in 45 days and I was like, boom. But that happens only because I knew what I was doing. And I knew myself, I trusted myself, I backed myself. And so many women don't trust themselves with money. So I think it's imperative that you go on more podcasts. It's imperative that you share your story and that you overcome this analysis paralysis in any way, shape, or form, and just keep on sharing those two stories alone, your own personal story and the story of the origins of your business, because those two stories alone, you're going to go on multiple podcasts and you're going to think, oh, they've heard this before. No, they haven't. You're speaking to a different audience every single time. You've heard yourself say it before, but for the most part, most of your audience will not know that story, especially if you're going on other people's shows. And so by you sharing just those two stories, I'm immediately connected. I'm like, take my money. Like, let's go. Do you have an initiative as well? Like, to give back to these women? Like, how do we help more women? Like, I feel the calling from your story. And that is so powerful that I don't think you need to try to find and dig and try to find multiple stories. I mean, you'll find more stories as you go along and as you're, sharing more stories of clients and whatnot and success stories. And as more people come to you and you have more conversations with women in the real estate investing world. But I think just in general, like just those two stories alone, you lead with those two, you're golden.
Thank you. Thank you. I feel such relief.
I'm glad I could provide you with relief. That's good.
Again, you've seen my win sheet, and there is a lot there, and you've just made this process really easy. And the fact that the sense of clarity, like I am incredibly driven. I am incredibly driven to help other people. And thank you for picking out those couple of aspects. I
think the biggest thing that people trip up on, especially with their one sheet and with speaking in general, is thinking it's about themselves. And I'm not saying that this is you, but I think so often it's very easy for us to make the story about ourselves. And you so clearly outline in the stories that you've shared that both you leaving the mediocre marriage of and leaving and finding your like having 4 years until you stumbled upon note investing and suddenly like you're like, oh, this took off. And then the origin story of your business, like those two stories alone pave the way for the why. Like that is the why. And thus it's no longer about you. It's just about you getting to be of service, which I know is your love language anyway.
Oh, thank you. And thank you for pulling those strings together. I find it incredibly vulnerable. I am weirdly an introvert, and most people don't believe that. I'm just an incredibly energetic introvert. And
same here.
And people, I think, even talking about myself, it's just not part of what I do. And it's funny, I heard a friend of mine say something about me the other day, somebody who does know me fairly well, and she probably doesn't know half of the stuff that we've spoken about because it's just not part of our relationship. And somebody asked me in front of her, tell me about yourself. I was like, oh, I don't really have anything to say. My friend's jaw dropped over and she was like, you're so interesting. You're the most interesting person I know. Your life has been fascinating. And I was genuinely shocked. I was shocked, maybe not, but definitely surprised. I thought it was hilarious. I'm not used to coming from that place of talking about me.
I find that it's very interesting as people get more visible in their businesses, that suddenly, even if worth and wealth is something that you've healed, it's now that worth piece gets to come into a whole new realm of healing when the spotlight is on you.
I am doing my best not to cry or cackle.
It's interesting that I see a lot of women, because when I work with coaches as their business coach, like women who have overcome something, and maybe they're like a relationship coach or a health coach, they have these principles down and they've healed it in this area. But suddenly when it comes to business or finances, it shows up again. And so you're just the reverse, because you've already healed it in the financial sector, and now it's just on the visibility side.
That feels really accurate, actually. Like, I've gotten my stuff and my story together around how I create and contribute, and then the visibility aspect. But the reality is I can't help women if they can't find me. And that's what I have to just keep reminding myself of, is that if they can't find me, I can't help them.
Mm-hmm.
So again, thank you for pulling those strings together.
You're welcome. You're welcome. It has been my pleasure to have you on, Hànanda. How do we find you? How do we work with you? How do we learn about note investing and get more information so we can make solid, safe financial decisions for ourselves and our future?
Thank you. I am in all the places. LinkedIn is actually, I'm really dedicated right now, the last quarter, in being on LinkedIn more frequently. My goal is to increase my reach so I can increase other women's wealth. And so LinkedIn is a great place. And as far as education, I would love for you to have a look at my YouTube channel. There's loads of education on there about how to make great choices in your notes. And I am always up for a virtual coffee.
Get it, queen. I love it. Hànanda, I just adore you. I think that you have the biggest heart. You have such a versatile background, and I know your heart and your passion for serving and supporting women to really, truly build freedom, and also with a little side of fuck you from time to time when appropriate. With that, as always, know, my fellow sovereigns, that your story has the power to save at least one life. So go out there and be heard.
Queen, if what you just heard stirred something in you, if you are imagining how your voice, your story, your genius could be positioned with the same clarity and magnetism, then it's time. Book your visibility consultation with me today. I will guide you personally through a 7-step Communication Queen strategy, personalized connections to podcasts that need your voice, and an implementation plan that makes you unignorable. But this isn't for everyone. It's for the visionary who is ready to be seen. If that is you, click the link in the description to book your visibility consultation now. Thank you so much for listening. If you love this episode, subscribe, leave us a review, and share it with your friends. For more tips on guest podcasting, storytelling, and communication strategies, follow us on social media at Communication Queens Agency and visit us at communicationqueens.com. I look forward to seeing you in the next episode. And in the meantime, remember, your story has the power to save one life. Let your story and your voice be heard.